This is Cheche, the show where opinion counts. Good morning and thank you for joining us. I'm Hussein Mohammed sitting in for Udwa Kamimo. It's day 2 and counting before the lapse of the 7-day period within which President Kenyatta's victory in the just concluded repeat presidential election can be challenged in the Supreme Court. And even after the much-awaited address from opposition leader Raila Odinga, who insists the election was a sham, will not stand and a fresh poll must be conducted, there are no indications yet that they, that is the opposition, will challenge the results in court. What next then for Kenya? Which way forward? You can text us or tweet us. The text number is 22422 and the hashtag on Twitter is Cheche. On the show this morning, we have Vitalis Musebe, who's a veteran journalist, joining us. Of course, he's had several years practicing as a journalist, still a journalist, once head of news at KTN, KBC editor-in-chief, also deputy director, public information and media in the committee of experts. Practicing since 1985. Thank you so much for making time for us this morning.
Thank you.
And the CEO, NASA Secretariat, Norman Magai, also joins us this morning. Thank you so much. Regular panelists on the show, Mutegi Njau and Charles Odambo, again, thank you so much for making time for us. Secretary General Jubilee Party, Raphael Tuju, was supposed to join us this morning, but he's just sent a text saying he cannot appear on the same show or on the same platform with Norman Magai. Norman will tell us what the problem is. But we regret that. But CEO, Secretary General Jubilee Party Raphael Tuju is supposed to be in this show, and as I said, he now has sent a text saying he cannot appear on the same show with Norman Magai. Norman, I'll start with you. There was a statement yesterday, an address by Raila Odinga that was much anticipated. Everybody was waiting for it. He's talked about several things, constitutional amendments, through people assemblies, talking about demonstrations and the freedom to still doing it, and even a task force to look into systemic governance weaknesses. Many, and the other panelists can also comment on this, thought or had believed you'll say something, or NASA will say something about challenging the results in court, because you're saying these results cannot stand, they are a sham, and a repeat election again must be conducted.
I think our position before October 26th was that the exercise planned for the 26th of October was not anything near what the Constitution contemplates. And that's what it was eventually when IBC decided to go ahead with it. So I don't think it is in our place to challenge an event that never happened. From where we sit, that was a Jubilee nominations exercise presided over by Chebukati. And I think it will have its judgment in the minds of Kenyans. So as the National Super Alliance, we have no intention whatsoever to challenge the results of October 26th, because we think it will not be doing justice to ourselves to stoop low and start engaging Chebukati on an exercise he conducted for and on behalf of Uhuru Kenyatta. Will not go that way. And that's why we've insisted that for us to move out of where we are, given the decision of the Supreme Court on September 1st, that we must have an election that is conducted in accordance with the Constitution. You cannot just use taxpayers' money to conceive a template of an election that you think satisfies the dictates of the Constitution and go ahead with it. So they can't get away with it. If any Kenyan out there is willing to go to court, we wish them well, but certainly not us. I think we have other avenues of dealing with this matter, and we've said that we are going to deal with it definitively. And I want to say, Hussein, that let it be understood clearly that we are no longer going to accept to live in our country as though we are foreigners in this country. Okay. I think the story of the last 4 years must now come to...
I'll come to those issues and what you're talking about, but very briefly, when is the mandate, according to you then as NASA, at what point then do you stop recognizing the mandate of the IEBC? Because you withdrew from this election following legal means. This is the same IEBC, legally mandated, constitutionally mandated, that has conducted this election and again declared Uhuru Kenyatta president-elect. How are you going to say you don't recognize that?
You see, there are three things that you need to look at to say. Number one is that what was the position of IEBC prior to conducting this election? And the positions were well advanced by the chairman, Chebukati himself, and by former Commissioner Roslyn Akombe. that there was simply no intention, there was no goodwill within the commission to conduct an election that was free, fair, and credible. And we met Chebukati a few days to the election when he said he wanted to meet Raila and meet Uhuru. Raila Mudavadi went and met Chebukati, and he told them in no uncertain terms that as things stand now, I cannot tell you that we have capacity as a commission to conduct an election that is free and fair. Until Wednesday, when Chebukati came to address the press at around 3:30, he had not had a meeting with any of his commissioners. He first came, went into a 40 minutes meeting with his commissioners, and came out to declare to the country that now IEBC is ready for election. And the question is, these weighty issues that you are raising, when were they resolved for you to decide that now you want to conduct an election that is consistent with the Constitution?
Okay.
And our view has been that the meeting between Chebukati and Uhuru was not a meeting to discuss the logistics and the issues around conducting an election that is free and fair. Chebukati was simply reminded the promises he made prior to his appointment, and he had to keep those promises.
Okay, yeah. You haven't still answered my question.
That's yes.
No.
What evidence do you have about that?
Mutegi, I can tell you that from where I sit,
with what authority?
I speak with a lot of authority.
Not
as a key player.
Not for Uhuru, not for Chebukati.
No. IEBC is not anyone's property. Whatever happens in IEBC, we have a way of knowing what is happening there. And that's why we speak with them, and they have not been able to controvert what we say.
No, we have moles there.
No.
but ultimately, I mean, we get information from IEBC when they meet NASA, from NASA, and from the government, and we're supposed to go with that as the public information we're getting, isn't it?
I think when they met, all you received was an 8 seconds video.
In all fairness, I think there are issues that here need to be conceptualized properly and addressed as they are. First, the Supreme Court gave a ruling saying election would be held in 60 days. That was a ruling that was made. Now, that ruling was not changed. The election had to be held in 60 days. Now, within these 60 days, the election was supposed to be held. There are several other issues that happened, crossing over between the two competing political camps. Now, one camp says let's proceed, another camp says we're not proceeding. Indeed, in fact, Magaya's principal decided and publicly declared he was not going to participate in that election. So that decision must have been taken on the premise that the election was going to take place. That's why he said he was not going to participate. So if they didn't participate in that election, they have a legitimate rights. And these rights and privileges that politicians and political parties and political interests have put us where we are. We need solutions. We do not need this grandstanding. We know Magaya represents a faction of a political system that we have in place today. He represents NASA. The person who has not come to this show, Raphael Tuju, represents the other, and that's one of the reasons I was asking Mr. Magaya here. Supposing you met outside this screen, would you sit with Raphael Tuju and discuss any issues? He said, yeah, he's a friend. So the only issue is this. There is a problem Kenya has today, and this problem is about politics. It's not about elections. I was seeing something today about the NASA principle saying what we are fighting for is democracy, we are fighting for reforms, and we are fighting for constitutionalism. And I thought that only how many years ago did we do a new constitution? And everybody around was saying this constitution was the most progressive constitution we've ever had. Now we are all tied together, tying everything around whether these issues are constitutional or whether they are not constitutional. One side says, we are following the constitution. Uhuru and his camp, the president, the same we are following the constitution. NASA is saying we're not following the constitution. So where are we going to start following the constitution that we think is the right way to follow it?
They are actually also saying they are following the constitution in the decisions that they have taken. Charles, do you think, or did you expect, for you even Mutegi, that yesterday's announcement will also be challenging these results in court? Or that election?
Well, Right Honorable Raila Odinga had said that they are not going to court. But when he was interviewed by SABC, the South African Broadcasting, he suggested that some people
Could be going to court.
will be going to court, which means maybe, to me, it looks like he won't go to court, but he has proxies who will do that.
Although you remember on after the August 8th results, he also said they won't go to court until last minute.
From where I sit, I did not expect NASA to say anything different. More so after the events of 25th October, when the Supreme Court lacked a quorum to listen to the case about the adjournment or the postponement of the election. But my issue is, Mutegi has always said on this set, time and again, that the biggest challenge with Kenya is trust. And I think here, the person who has failed this nation the most is the IEBC chair, Wafula Chebukati. Not legally, but morally. Probably he would have had a chance to sit down with all the presidential candidates in one room, come out in the full glare of the cameras and address the nation and say, we have sat, we have talked with the players on moral issues, and this and this and this is what we've agreed. Vitalis says that the Supreme Court says elections on 1st September said elections in 60 days. But that was not all. The Supreme Court says election in 60 days according to the law.
Yes.
Now that is the argument of NASA. The law was not followed. And now I go back to NASA, Norman. If the Supreme Court said the law should be followed in this fresh elections, and the law was not followed, why don't you people go back to the Supreme Court and report that your ruling has been contravened? You said we do elections in 60 days according to the law. These people have failed to do it according to the law. Or are you telling us you now want to operate outside the law?
I think, Charles, you need to look at a few things. One, the matter that was before the Supreme Court on the 25th, and the Chief Justice, in his wisdom, while satisfying that matter as urgent, directed that that matter be served on all parties that were in the petition, petition 1 of 2017. And the issues before the court that day was that there was a substantive non-compliance with the orders of the court, and that it was not possible to have those issues sorted out within the remaining hours to the election, and that it was prudent for the Supreme Court to give directions extending the dates within which that election could be conducted. But what happened? I've just been reading news this morning, and apparently the lack of quorum that day was informed by a protest from the judges. After the shooting of the Deputy Chief Justice's security, the judges asked for more security and the government refused. And the judges said, if we cannot be given enhanced security, we will not turn up to hear that matter. And that was the essence of why there was no quorum.
Again, that is you saying. That is you saying. I mean, we can't confirm that.
I've read in the news. It's not my story. Go to Reuters, and they are quoting judicial resources. A judicial spokesman has said this is what happened.
Okay.
It's not my story.
You can't say that as a matter of fact. It is alleged that that happened, isn't it?
As far as I know, and from where I sit, I don't think Reuters are propellers of fake news. And so I take what they write very seriously, just the same way I will take what Citizen posts any time. When I'm looking for news on something that has come out and I see Citizen has posted, then I know this is authentic. And that is how I take the story in Reuters this morning. So if this was about extending the date of election, and the judges are saying our security is at risk, the state is grandstanding saying we can't enhance, and they refuse to turn up. So what circumstances have changed between 25th and now for you now to go and file a fresh petition challenging?
I was going to ask that question immediately. Charles talked about it, but you have actually just said it.
Yes.
Are you confirming then that one of the reasons why, whether it's a key reason or it's one of the reasons you're not going to court, is that you're not confident that the process will be fair because of what happened on the 25th?
I think one of the things we've said is that Jubilee has embarked on a systematic process to muzzle institutions that stand in its way, the institutions that have stood in defense of the Constitution. You've seen what they have done at IEBC, literally taken over the commission through 4 commissioners. Now, at the Supreme Court, if you can't intimidate these judges, then you find, if you can't get hold of them, you find a way of intimidating them. And this is what happened on the events leading to 25th. We don't think the circumstances have changed. I think the president's giving his speech at Bomas after the declaration, the way he spoke about the impending legal process was very contemptuous, that will make you think twice. Do we have an institution that has the mettle in the face of all these intimidations from the state?
He said, let the process,
No. He said there are people who will want, and this is the president who had called the judges of the Supreme Court crooks. He has not had an occasion, as the person who swore to defend the Constitution, to retract that statement. So what we know as of now is that Uhuru considered the judges of the Supreme Court to be crooks.
Okay, let me just get this straight. I mean, for the record, we had Chief Justice David Maraga speaking that day on the 25th. He said very clearly, and Njoki Ndung'u could not make it. He said she was waiting for a flight. Yeah. Justice Mohammed Ibrahim was sick and away. Lena Ola was around. We know what happened the night before to the bodyguard of DCJ Mwilu and what happened and why she couldn't come. He also said, he didn't say where Justice Wanjala and Justice Ojwang are, but just said they are not available. I'm asking you, just like as I asked before,
yes,
what happened that day? Are you saying, you're alleging that those judges were intimidated? And is that the reason why you're also not going to court again? I'm
not alleging. At least one news source, Reuters, has had an occasion to interview the judicial spokesman. They have interviewed Njoka, the spokesman for the Ministry of Interior, and those issues are now out in the open.
Okay.
That there was an atmosphere of intimidation and fear that the judges didn't feel safe enough to come out and hear these cases.
So the question is that why you not go to court?
And Hussein, I can tell you this for a fact. It is not ordinary that the highest court, confronted with a matter of great public interest, will lack quorum.
This is a matter that was quickly...
It is not ordinary.
That was quickly...
It's not quickly. This is a matter that has been certified urgent and given a hearing date by the Chief Justice. Okay? Immediately the Chief Justice does that, all judges are notified. Okay. And as court process always, if there was an issue of quorum that had arose, the same way we were conducting proceedings during the presidential election petition, the Chief Registrar of the Supreme Court will have written to all parties and say the court will not be able to sit tomorrow.
Exactly.
It only occurred to the Chief Justice that morning that he didn't have a bench to hear this case.
Shouldn't he have raised eyebrows to all the others, to be fair to Norman Magaya? Because somehow this was quickly taken over by events because of what happened the next day was an election. People did not really talk about this. But here, everybody's waiting for a case to be heard that day. It's a momentous occasion, and the Chief Justice comes and gives an excuse about two judges who cannot come, and the rest he just says they are unavailable. Well, will they be right, in other words, and anyone else who think they're being intimidated?
I think the issues there now are becoming conjecture. You know, the reality is that it didn't happen because the charges were not there. And there are two things about about this issue. First, it's not the first time that the judiciary or our top judges have run out of quorum and postponed. These things called certificates of agent, they sometimes are not heard. But let us look at the fundamental issues. Let us once look at these issues from the point of view of a wider perspective of what is it that is happening now.
Okay. Before you go there.
Not the issue of whether...
But it's an issue because they are concerned. They are concerned. They want to seek justice, but they are concerned with the events that happened that day.
That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Let me just...
The events that happened that day happened and they passed, isn't it?
Okay.
The elections came and went.
Fine.
Now, what do we do?
Okay, we're getting there. We're getting there. But there's a question here I want you to answer. They are concerned because of that day. They are concerned, from what Norman is saying, that they may not get justice ultimately. Should that be a concern?
Definitely is a concern. You see, when you go to court, you need to be assured that there will be justice. That's why you are seeking arbitration from the court. The court is supposed to arbitrate and resolve issues that are contentious, isn't it? Now, if you go to court with the preconceived position that the court we are going to not give you justice, then why are you going to that court?
Okay, as parties, you can also answer this. As parties in that case, that day, because we need to move forward to what next, but as parties to that case, we saw NASA talk that day. We saw the petitioner Harun Ndubi talk. Should we have seen Jubilee also talk as a party to that case and raise their concerns as to where these charges were? Because they did not raise concerns.
Well, this is what we're saying. These are political competitions, competitors, isn't it? One is feeling the concerns that Mr. Makaya have are very legitimate, extremely legitimate concerns. Because when you go to court, first, if a matter is certified agent, it's supposed to be addressed as such. You're supposed to look at it from that perspective. Now, here is a Chief Justice who comes to court. Instead of bringing along with his 5 judges, he says these ones are not available. And he does not go into the extent of saying why they are not available. He says they were not able to come to this court. Now, 2 things here happened. One is that there are so many things happening in this country that do not lead, and Magaya has addressed it. So many things are happening in this country because of specific forces that are outside the courts, that are outside the Electoral Commission, that are outside everywhere, that put pressure on other institutions. And we know that has been happening over the years. So I think the point to make is this. Mr. Magaya here is right, because the first thing is, when you go to court, the court is supposed to be an independent organ of government. It's supposed to be ready and prepared to give you justice, not to go and explain that we didn't have a quorum to give you justice. But we know that we need to fix this country. We have been saying our judiciary is the most independent, isn't it? When did we stop having an independent judiciary? Is it because the judiciary has given a contrary decision?
But
that you don't like?
Mr. Museveni,
Yeah.
the fact that the judiciary annulled a presidential election,
yes,
it shows that it's independent. The fact that they missed the quorum that day, maybe because of the reasons given by Mr. Magaya, but that does not mean that would mean the status quo. In fact, the Chief Justice said, if the Electoral Commission conducts election the way they did on the 8th of August, it will be annulled again. The more the reason why Magaya and his people should go to court.
But you see, what Mr. Magaya is saying...
Because it doesn't mean that there was no quorum that day, that when and if
they decide
to go to court, or anybody else, that there will be no quorum.
What I'm saying...
It doesn't mean...
What I'm saying, Mr. Mutek, is this. If you listen to Magaya carefully, he said there has been a systematic marshalling of institutions. And that...
Is that a fact?
That what happened that day was part of that marshalling of institutions. Is that what you said?
Hussein,
okay, let Charles.
From where I sit, I understand NASA's fears of going back to the Supreme Court. And the events of 25th October are glaring. I mean, after the president said Maraga na wakora wake, you know, this is the president of the Republic of Kenya. If the president calls you Mkora Hussein, you will tremble in your shoes.
But Magaya spoke, Maraga spoke after that. Yeah. And he asserted the independence. Yeah.
And that is what I'm coming to. Now, the events of 25th October, and considering what you've pointed out, Jubilee never talked, although they were part of this case. That's so telling. Now, if NASA goes to court, and the court decides that the elections were done well, and that President Uhuru Kenyatta was elected duly, they are finished. Because they have followed all the due process of the law, and the Supreme Court has decided that the elections were held well. So they are not, you don't have any other recourse. I am seeing a situation where even Jubilee, if NASA don't go to court, Jubilee could send a proxy to court, and the court and present.
Charles, are you saying?
Conjecture.
Are you saying?
No.
Are you saying it is not in NASA's interests then to go to court?
If I was NASA, I would not go to court.
Why? Because you think they'll. I mean, there are two things that can happen in court. Either the election is upheld, or
because obviously the election will not be cancelled.
Why?
You can't say obviously. I mean, why would you say?
And remember, I said the election would not be cancelled. One, the president called judges of the Supreme Court wakora. He has scared them. And two, the Supreme Court, the apex court in the land, lacks a quorum on the day they have a matter of urgency on a presidential election, Hussein. Other than Judge Joaquin Dungu and Judge Mwilu and Judge Mohammed, Where were the rest? How do you just say Hussein was not able to come to work today and leave it at that? And we are expecting you to...
On what you're saying about the president's statements, again, Chief Justice David Maraga spoke at length about it and asserted the judiciary's independence and said, you actually remember him saying, if you want to do a referendum, do away with the judiciary, you can do away with the judiciary, but we will do as the judiciary will continue doing our job and being independent.
Hussein, I think before you go there, let us go back to what you have just said. The reality is this. The Chief Justice spoke the way he spoke. But look at the ruling of the Supreme Court. There were two dissenting opinions.
Yeah.
And then there was one who was outside the hearing, who was unwell, isn't he? Still unwell.
Yes.
So basically, if you are talking about the judiciary being united, the judiciary being asserting its independence, don't you think already at that point there was a problem?
There is no problem with dissension.
No, there was no problem.
That's
Let me just go back to what I was saying. Institutions of this country, Mutegi, have been having challenges with certain executive power limiting their operations. Now, when you say that Chebukati should have called all the parties' presidential candidates, Chebukati has tried several times to call those all presidential candidates on the table. None of them was willing to go with the other.
Just like Norman will not
Just like Norman will not come with.
So it's an issue of trust.
I think Vitalis, let's go back to the question Hussein asked, and I think you need to contextualize these things properly. You look at August 8th and you look at October 25th. Prior to August 8th, 7 days to that election, the man charged with the most important component of that election is killed in cold murder.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
And it affects the manner in which that election was conducted.
Yes.
Okay? A day before an election, there is a case before the Supreme Court saying, hey, look here, the orders you gave and the way this process has been conducted, there is no possibility that these orders will be complied with. Can you give direction on this matter? And all of a sudden, the court has no quorum. If you contextualize those two events, and these are two events that affect the manner in which these institutions function, it's not a fact you can just run away from, that it was ordinary that the Supreme Court will lack quorum to sit on such an important matter. And I think what we've said consistently is that there has been a deliberate attempt by Jubilee to ensure that the institutions that are supposed to ensure that our democracy and our elections are conducted in strict accordance with the Constitution do not undertake that mandate as contemplated in the Constitution. So, and that is our position.
Right.
That it will not add any value. One, that we said this election was a sham, that we were not going to participate in it, we withdrew. It makes no sense to go and challenge an election that you did not participate in. Yeah, it makes no sense. Absolutely.
My problem is this. We, like Musava said, you have a very good constitution worldwide. So I hear. I'm not a constitutional lawyer. If
he says,
if anybody goes against the constitution, the recourse is the court. If therefore we have no faith in the court, so we are up for anarchy.
Actually, that is the question.
Is that what you are saying?
That was actually what I was coming to.
We expect now, therefore, we don't trust the court.
Are we now operating outside the law?
We resort to anarchy.
Magaya, you recognize the constitutional mandate of the court. Magaya, before you answer that,
yes,
you recognize the constitutional mandate of the courts of the judiciary to adjudicate over matters, isn't it? Over constitutional matters. That you do.
Yes.
And we have seen you, even after August 8th, even after Uhuru famously or infamously called these charges Wakora, you were still going to adjudicate matters in the courts. It didn't stop then. So why not now? And I'll read this statement. When you said yesterday, when Raila Odinga said yesterday, we shall see to it that we conduct a free, fair and credible presidential election as ordered by the Supreme Court. That will still happen. That's what you're saying. So how are you going to do that if you're not going to go back to the courts?
You see, you said, you people, you need to read the Constitution as a whole. Because what you are doing is reading the Constitution, provisions of the Constitution in isolation. One, the Constitution itself says clearly that any attempt to establish a government other than in the format prescribed in the constitution is illegal. The government Uhuru is attempting to establish now after this sham 26th thing is illegal.
And who determines that?
So you cannot,
Who
determines
that?
Exactly. The constitution provides the threshold for determining that. Just listen.
You are saying it's illegal.
Just listen.
Who decided so?
And then the constitution does not say, the constitution does not say that the only way to enforce your rights is going to court. It provides other avenues. And the avenues provided in Article 37, okay, direct action by the citizens is what we are invoking. We have not walked out of the constitution. So as long as we are still operating within the four corners of the constitution, we reserve the right to pursue an avenue that we think is the most effective in addressing the matter at hand.
That question.
And in my view, what we have is a political problem where a political establishment that has turned itself into a monster that is scavenging the institutions of this country to stop them from executing their constitutional mandate. As we are saying, as citizens, we take advantage of Article 37 to go back to the trenches and root out this dictatorship.
As a citizen of this country, a law-abiding citizen, who determines the legality or illegality of a process?
Go back to the interpretation of the Constitution, Article 259. It says any person who interprets and applies this Constitution. There is no monopoly of interpretation of the Constitution, Charles. And the Constitution says so in Article 259. Any person who interprets or applies this Constitution.
Okay. Yeah. So when just a minute. So when 7.3 million Kenyans decide to interpret the Constitution, that the election was done according to law, and we voted and elected President Uhuru
I'm not aware.
Right.
I'm not aware of any 7.3.
Okay. According to
I'm not aware.
What are you aware of?
I'm only aware of 3.5.
Okay, but Norman according to just a moment, Vitalis, just a moment. But Norman, according to the Constitution, it is IBC that has the mandate to conduct this election, isn't it? That you recognize.
Yes.
It's IBC that will ultimately declare.
And IBC is not individuals.
It's a commission.
Yes.
Yes. And it's IBC that will declare the winner or the loser or whatever in an election.
Yes.
And it's provided, again, if you want to challenge a presidential election, the only way you can challenge it is the Supreme Court.
Yes.
So how are you going to go around that?
You see, what we are doing, we've said in our opinion, from where we sit, there is no character of an election of the President of the Republic of Kenya that took place on 26th. It was a nullity, it was an event that never happened. And that's why our resort is the rights provided for under Article 37 Mutegi. So those who think, and from where they sit, think that there was an election on 26th, the courts of this world can go to court.
But a few minutes ago, you said you don't recognize 7.4, that you said, but you recognize 3 million. When did the 3 million come from?
It's an observation, not a recognition. You have to differentiate an observation and a recognition.
Let us move this argument somewhere away from this whole issue of the past. Mr. Magaya has said this is a political problem, isn't it? You say it is a political problem. Now, this political problem is what is driving this country to where we are, just driven us where we are. It's a political problem. Let us not hide behind the Constitution. Jubilee has been hiding behind the Constitution to do what it has done, isn't it? NASA is talking about the Constitution to do what they want to do. The whole issue is this: each person with an interest wants the Constitution to serve the interests they stand for. Now, in this whole matter, this political problem that we have here, if we ban because people are not following the Constitution, if we ban because people are not following the law, the Constitution and the law will not save us from banning. It is the people, it is the politicians. So let us be realistic and say to ourselves, there are two political forces in Kenya today. If we go by the August 8th elections, we see that both sides had about 6 million people, isn't it? Any side getting to power will exclude another big side. And the political divide in Kenya is political and not constitutional and not legal. It's political. We decided we go the presidential system, and this presidential system has become our water law. It has caused us a situation where we are, that is where we are here not because the law does not apply. We are here not the constitution does not apply. We are here because political interests have ceased.
So it doesn't matter whether we have the presidential or parliamentary.
If the law today, let us agree, if the law today said that the election of President Uhuru Kenyatta has been annulled again, shall we have peace?
Okay. On that note, we'll take a break. Talking about what next for Kenya, which way forward. Keep talking to us. The hashtag is Cheche on Twitter. You can text us on 22422. The discussion continues after this break. We're trying to look at the way forward, and we'll talk now about dialogue and the conditions again set by both parties if dialogue is to be held. We're back after this.